Yeah, ma'am, we are live. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Good evening. I'm Meenakshi Vadhera, an audiologist and speech language pathologist. And on behalf of Indian Speech Language and Hearing Association, I welcome you all to our final educational session of this Speech and Hearing Awareness Annuals 2020. Keeping the main purpose of these annuals in mind, that is to spread awareness, during last 13 days, we talked about different types of speech, language, hearing and balance disorders. We discussed about their features, various causes, and also what to do about them. And also emphasize that in case you, your child, your family, or friends, if anyone has any speech language related problem, how important it is to consult a qualified speech language pathologist or an audiologist at the earliest. Yesterday, we talked about dementia and learned how early detection and treatment of some of the problems like hearing loss can probably reduce the risk of dementia or slow down the process. And today, we have yet very exciting session awaiting us. But before I talk about that, I would like to request Dr. Nirajkumar Singh. He's a EC member of Isha to address us all. Dr. Neeraj?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Uh, Good evening, everybody. Uh, Thank you for asking me to introduce this program. Uh, I am Dr. Nirajkumar Singh. I am the chairperson of Research and Training Promotion Committee of Indian Speech and Hearing Association. The Indian Speech and Hearing Association has successfully completed more than a half century and has been striving hard to ensure that the profession of speech and hearing grows grows proportionally every year. Uh, in its endeavor to ensure this year, for the first time, we are celebrating the speech and hearing awareness annuals. And as Mrs. Meenakshi Vadera has already uh, talked to you people and said that we have had 13 wonderful days of this celebration, and today is probably the final, and probably the finale is the fitting most, that we are having a talk and a wonderful discussion about the use of voice and how it can be used for professional singing. So with that, I would like to get back to you, madam, to continue
Thank
it
you, sir.
further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. So, before I talk about today's session, think about it. Your voice is the major mode of communication in your personal and professional lives and is an essential resource that should be protected, much like your hearing or eyesight. In fact, you might even think of your voice as your sound face. It's that integral to your identity. Nearly 7% of the world population experience some sort of voice problems in their life. Around 40% of singers, that is, professional voice users, experience voice problems in their career spanning across their life, from training to performance. So, it is not uncommon for singers to have voice issues. But the important factor is how to identify them early and seek appropriate solutions. Many questions occur to me. Can there be differences in the nature of the problem if the singers are trained in different genres, or do all singers pose similar issues? Do they have similar solutions? Are they easy and completely curable? Do we have experts whom we can consult, and what do they do? These are some of the discussions that will be addressed in today's panel. But before we start the panel, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Prakash Bhuminatham. He is the concept curator and moderator for today's session. I would like to share my screen. But before we start, I just want to tell you that yesterday we had a plethora of activities, from starting from quiz to dementia and cognitive communication rehabilitation, and also about a discussion about role of media. If you missed any of these, please visit our YouTube channel Isha Annuals and you can watch them there. And I would also like to thank our event sponsors for helping us for these events. So let's talk about our the man behind this show today, Dr. Prakash Bhuminathan. He is a speech pathologist and voice specialist. He is a professor and head of the Department of Speech, Language and Hearing Sciences, Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research, which is in Chennai. He did his graduation and post graduation from uh, Aish and PhD on vocal dynamics of singing voice from Sri Ramchandra University. He is a Fulbright scholar and voice performance laboratory from Voice Performance Laboratory, University of Cincinnati, Ohio. He has been in also played a very important role in Isha. He has been EC member, has been honorary treasurer, chairperson ethics and educational standards, and he has conducted several workshops on professional voice care for singers, teachers, ENT surgeons, and SLPs. There couldn't have been any better moderator or a person who could have taken this session forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Meenakshi Vadera, for this fine introduction and kind words. Thank you. Vanakkam, everyone, and my respects to all who have joined us through Zoom and watching us on YouTube Live. At the outset, I would like to thank Indian Speech and Hearing Association for providing me with this opportunity to engage and deliberate on a topic that I'm so passionate about and I have been working the last 2 decades. Speech and Hearing Assets for Life is the theme this year for the Isha Annuals 2020. And in tune with this, today's panel discussion will address several issues on a unique human attribute, a sophisticated and refined use of voice, the singing, which is the most common vocal art form that is intertwined in our day-to-day living and in society. Vocal music reflects our culture, tradition, and heritage. It is a great stress buster and entertains people away from boredom. Anyone who can sing is often considered as gifted, as they attract immediate attention from everyone around. But only the singer would know what he or she actually undergoes. The rigors of practice, the training and the sacrifices that leads to a performance, the refinements required to express his or her voice in the most creative sense. Today's panel discussion will deal with clarifying and throwing light on a few of these aspects that pertain to training, vocal health, and performance. This is also very apt in timing as Chennai is getting ready to unfold its offering during the Margari music season, which will start the day after, on 16th of December. To discuss on these, I have with me experts from 4 different styles of music: the Hindustani, Carnatic, Western opera, and Indian film singing. I have the pleasure to introduce all of them first to you and also today later take part in this panel as an expert in vocal health. So let me start with Vidushi Lalita Sharma. She is a Hindustani vocalist and guru, trained in both Carnatic and Hindustani styles. She chose to perform and teach Hindustani music. She is a disciple of Pandit Jasraj, a renowned Hindustani Vidwan of famous Mewati Gharana. She grew up in Kolkata, trained in Mumbai, and currently lives in Chennai. The world has been her stage. She has performed across the globe. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, Madam. Lalita, welcome. Vidwan Palakkad Ram Prasad, has popularized the music traditions of his grandfather, legendary Mridangist Palakkad Mani Iyer, and his father, also his guru Vidwan T.R. Rajaram, an ace violinist. Ram Prasad took to vocal music as a career after completing his PhD in economics from University of Georgia and a postdoc from Harvard School of Public Health, USA. Today, he is an active sought after performer, a classic guru who emphasizes on the importance of traditional Prachina practices to master Carnatic singing and recover from vocal difficulties. It will be our joy today to listen to you while you share your observations of the present and compare with the past era, only to accept the change and move forward. Welcome, Ram. Miss Nisia Majoli, she's a trained pianist, Western opera, and a rock singer. She was trained in Brunei, Singapore, and at the Western Australian Voice Conservatorium in Perth. She is an empaneled expert in the Indian Council of Cultural Relations Reference Panel of Artists and is also an advisory council member of the Karnataka Artists Association that was set up for the welfare of the artists. Nisia is the founder trustee of the Majoli Trust. She is an encouraging voice coach who has cultivated several singers over the years. Thank you for joining us today. Nisia, welcome. Ms. Kalpana Raghavendra represents the Indian film singing industry today. She comes from a family of singers and actors. She was exposed to the Indian film music industry from a very young age as a child artist. Her first playback was at the age of 5. She's trained in Carnatic singing and Western classical music. She has recorded nearly 1,500 tracks and performed over 3,000 stage shows. A popular judge of the Airtel Super Singer, she has a special place in several of her fans' hearts. She currently is in Hyderabad. So wonderful to have you today with us, Madam. Kalpana, welcome. My next panelist is Ms. Vaishnavi Ramadas, an audiologist by training, is also a budding Carnatic performer. She has learned Carnatic music from a very young age, and now she is currently researching on the effects of musical and auditory perception in older adults at Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education. She represents the voices of the budding artists. A pleasure to have you with us, Vaishnavi. Finally, as a voice from the public, to question all the panelists on your behalf, we have Shreya Nagarajan Singh, who is an art development consultant in Chennai. Shreya completed her bachelor's in psychology and her master's in art management from Columbia University, Chicago. She is a Bharatanatyam dancer and a Fulbright alumni who has traveled to several exotic places of the world, exploring arts and connecting with people. Shreya, it's a great pleasure to have you with us as the anchor of today's panel discussion. For those of you who are from the speech and hearing fraternity, Shreya also is the daughter of Professor Rupa Nagarajan, who is a well-known person in our field. So welcome, Shreya. So now I shall join the panelists as a voice health expert and hand over to Shreya to take over the discussion, all aimed at exploring the concepts in vocal training, voice health, and performance. Shreya.
Thank you so much, Prakash, and thank you to all the panelists and everybody watching. This is truly an honor. I never thought these two fields, being, my mother's daughter, I've always heard this through many, many evenings. So this is nice to see arts and speech and hearing integrate today. Prakash and I have actually been doing a few events for the last year or so, highlighting the importance of voice health and fitness for the arts community, mainly singers, coaches, voice artists, theater artists, because I just feel like being from the arts community, there's not enough being done in this space and not enough knowledge for many of the students and teachers as well. So I'm so happy that we get a spotlight for this event. So for some of you who are thinking, how are we going to spend the next hour and a half? We're going to basically divide it into 3 segments, right? The first segment being training, the second being voice health, and the third being performance. So we're going to delve into each of these subjects, and all of our panelists are going to be answering questions that Prakash and I have put together for them. But at the end of this whole 3 segments, we're going to have hopefully at least 15-20 minutes for question and answers. So for those of you who have, I'm sure many of you are going to have questions, if not now, by the end of it. So please do type it on the chat and we'll answer them at the end of the show. But just for the ease of communication, I'm just going to be addressing everybody by their first names, and I hope everybody else will do the same, just so no disrespect intended. Also, that we've also asked all our panelists to answer questions between 1 and 1.5 minutes, because we have a lot of ground to cover, and hopefully we can hear from everybody, and this will be a robust conversation. So now, I mean, the name of the panel is called The Singing Voice. So it'll be a pity to have all these fantastic singers and not have any singing. So I'm just going to put Vaishnavi on the spot. Vaishnavi, do you want to give us a little bit of a singing experience?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I think I'll pick up a song, a composition of the famous composer Saint Tyagaraja of the Carnatic music background, who lived about 250 years ago. And he speaks about, he conveys his reverence to the 7 notes. And he says that they emanate from first the abdomen, the chest, and then the throat. So I think that would be a fitting song for this panel. नाभि हृत्कण्ठरसना नाभि हृत्कण्ठरसना नाभि हृत्कण्ठरसना साधूलयन्तो सोऽबिल्लु सप्तस्वरसुन्दरुल भजिम्पवे मनसा सोऽबिल्लु सप्तस्वर
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to start. But you know, when we talk about voice, specifically listening to you, Vaishnavi, every one of these genres that we have today, be it Western or Hindustani, they have specific characteristics, right? Which basically is important in when you choose what genre you want to learn, right? And I think it'd be nice to have all our panelists just speak a little bit about what are some of those characteristics of their genre. Ram, because we just heard Carnatic music, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So when you think about Carnatic music, there are a lot of aspects that get into voice production because compositions of several, I mean, they run into thousands. So some compositions are typically in the lower octaves, some are predominantly in the middle ones, some are in the upper octaves. So first, the range is something which is extremely important. That is one important characteristic. The second thing is about the tempo in which you adjust your voice. So there are certain songs like the one that Vaishnavi beautifully sang. So this starts from the upper octave. She started from the Anupallavi. It starts from the upper octave, comes down. But when it ended in a slower note compared to when it started, right? So the pace in which you have to adjust your voice based on different tempos is something which is extremely important for you to, acclimatize yourself as a Carnatic musician. The third thing is the meter. So there are several talams. So there are 4 basic talams. Some are set into 8 beats, some are set into 7, some are set into 5, and some are set into 3. So maintaining this tempo while adjusting for the range, as well as this kind of, the speed of the compositions, that is something which is extremely important. So these 3 aspects are predominantly for the set meters. So there are 2 kinds. One is a kalpitam and the kalpana. Kalpitam is already set meters. So these three are extremely important. For the Kalpana part, which is impromptu, which you improvise on stage along with the violinist and the mridangist or the upapakavadya, that is something which you do on stage. And again, it has more variations than what I said here. So in terms of characterization of voice, maybe you don't have to focus on one specific thing, but perhaps you would be better off having a good amount of all these characteristics. So you have examples of everything. So you have examples of artists who have had great voices but not have been successful. You have had artists who have not have great voices but still have been successful. So you have the entire spectrum there. So Carnatic music, by God's grace, I mean, it gives an opportunity for everyone with every kind of voice to be successful if you work hard. So
very well said. Nisia, do you want to just shed a little bit of light on how it is for Western rock, etc.?
Yeah, so basically for Western vocal training, no matter what genre you're doing, the first thing that we, or rather I, and a lot of teachers might do, is first we start with the breathing. We don't start with notes at all. So because behind the voice is the breath. So it's very important to do a specific breathing exercises and get the support, which is from the diaphragm, which is basically the core, because the vocal cords are just for the pitch and not also to give the energy, because that's where the strain starts. So here's where the pitch is, and the core or the diaphragm is where the support is for the voice. So we start with breathing exercises and we do a lot of warm-ups. And when you're talking about range, it's a very different approach in Western training. I'm sure Kalpana knows this very well. So we don't kind of specifically point to a note where someone starts their scales or anything like that. So what we do is we try to figure out the range of a student, and we will take repertoire that suits the range. It's not that we are going to start a piece on that note that the singer is comfortable with. So like this, we can basically expand usually the upper range, and the lower range, of course, is not so easy to kind of extend. But the upper range, yes, because with the right abdominal support, singers can actually go much higher than they think that they can. Because usually, the thing is, oh, miss, I can't sing that high. I said, oh, yes, you can, So with the right technique, you can actually do that. So you have to choose repertoire that will suit the range that you have. So it's a pretty different approach here.
That's a very interesting point you made about individual students and understanding that capacity. And we'll come back to that in a little bit.
Sure.
Kalpana, do you want to shed some light on how it is for film singing? Way back.
Vanakkam and good evening to one and all. I think I have to borrow each and everything what Ram Prasad ji said and Nisia ma'am shared, and even what Vaishnavi presented. Film singing, I can say it as the character for film singing itself is the character. That is what is mainly film singing is all about. And Ram Prasad sir actually mentioned a beautiful, I would say that the pillars of any music genre, the Kalpita Sangeetam and the Kalpana, that is the Manodharmam. So the Kalpitam and Kalpana, I think in film music, we as singers, we definitely need both. Because once the music composer gives us a tune, he's going to sing and ask us to learn a tune. There, our Kalpitam has to be strong. We should have an idea about what is the song composition, what is the scale it is, approximately, at least is it a major scale or a minor scale, or if it is minor, it is Kiravani or Dharmavati, etc., or it is like a Mand or Behag or whatever. We should have, it's great to have such kind of ideas, so that why I mentioned film singing is as a character, why did I mention that is the reason. It's full of emotions. We are not doing much. There is no much scope for manodharmam actually in film music. But we do employ manodharmam aspects in film music nowadays very much. For example, they just give us 16 bars of some chord progression, where the strings would be playing, and they would ask us to sing. They would say this is a background music score. Here the heroine is going to like cry she's missing her loved one, so she's going to cry, and or 16 bars is going to music of something is going to come, and you have to, if you can add something on it. So if we say that, no sir, I'm very strong in kalpitam but I'm not good in manodharmam, the cinema doesn't accept that. If you're not you, then some other, if not them, some other. It keeps on going like that. And well, when coming to the point that Nisia ma'am specified about the range, actually speaking, in olden days, female singers used to fall under the range of alto singing. Like alto singing, maybe Carnatic. If I have to say about Carnatic aspect, like people who can sing five and a half, there is G sharp or A sharp, max. I don't even think people would have even stepped out of A before. Even four and a half, five and a half max. But now it is like, I would say it is like a super soprano, or either it's going to be below the alto. It's like very it is very a kind of a rash full approach. Now it's become a challenge for all the singers nowadays, because we use our chest voice. Some people have chest voice and they use the falsetto. Like me, I sing chest voice when I try to sing some western pieces or some Carnatic based or something, and I use my falsetto when I sing the songs of 80s 90s and their with melodies, everything. So I think I believe, as a musician, the kalpitam, how strong is your kalpitam, I think that makes the basement or the ground to build up your manodharmam. So I, as a musician, was trained in kalpita music by my father as well as by my guruji. So now I'm able to, face the storms. We can get any kind of situation where we sing a lullaby in the morning, and afternoon we sing a love duet, and then we sing a pathos song, or in the live concert that's being extremely challenging to the singers of today's world. We sing mass, we sing class, we sing all Western related thing, all somewhere like a classical Carnatic based film song. So all these, it's like we like play as like a kind of a one-man army. Sometimes versatility here, I would say, sometimes becomes a curse. Sometimes it's obvious, and we really run through the aspects of versatility.
I just want to interject here and explain to media audience members who may not know the meaning of manodharmam. Manodharmam is kind of like
Creativity. The simple word is
thoughts, intuitive singing based on your mood at that particular time. And that
You
is
mean-
what you're saying that you can't do in film, right? Because you're supposed to sing a love duet. You can only sing a love duet.
No, it happens. For example, if the composer is going to like compose a song in, say, Kalyani Ragam, there are several compositions in film music where pure Kalyani essence have been used without even mixing the alien swaras. But in such case, for example, if you don't know even the I won't say if you don't know, it would be of real help if you know the jiva swarams of Kalyani. You at least, it will be great if you can know the structure of Kalyani, where that is where the Kalpitam Sangeetam comes. And Kalpitam Sangeetam, according to me, I would say it's any strong foundation on a classical music. Let it be Hindustani, or let it be Western classical, or let it be our Carnatic. Let it be anything, because you should know, for Kalpitam is, you should be able to decode a tune. You should know what are the swarams, what are the places of that swaram. If you don't know the difference between the Pratimadimam and the Shuddhamadimam, then it becomes really a big headache for the composer. See, that was everybody, all let it be, you take Sushilama or SPB sir or Ghantasala sir or Eshuda sir, anybody for that matter, till now Chitramma, they know they were very, very, very strong in their Kalpita.
Yeah.
So it really helped them to sing even a Kriti based composition or Raga based composition, or more than that, characterization is something which is aesthetic to the particular musician. It's about the lifestyle. For
Absolutely.
example, I would be, as a Tamil lady born in the Tamil man, I would be able to emote love or pathos or romance, which is pertaining to my culture, because that is in my blood. But whereas if you give me the character of an Italian lady, and if you ask me to romance with an Italian guy, it might be like really or comedy show mari irukum to see me that. So film singing is all even about your culture, your aesthetic
love towards your tradition.
Yeah. Ms. Lalita, can I bring you in here? How is it in Hindustani? I'm sure like there are a lot of common adages from what you've been saying, but what are the typical characteristics for Hindustani singing?
Namaste. Good evening to everybody. Yes, again, going back to all that Ram said, and most of those things are all common in Carnatic and the Hindustani styles of music. But the first, most important thing is Shruti, or alignment to Sur, even before, the first day when the student comes to learn. That is the first thing that we have to check out before even thinking about anything else. And that is given a lot of importance while the training goes on, at least for a couple of years, to align one's ears and the voice to go in line with the Shruti. Process, the ears have to become extremely refined to hear the fine tuning of the Tanpura or the Shruti source. And only then actually is the justice done to any of the notes that we sing, no matter which rag it is. So we do a lot of Khadasur, or standing on one note practice when we first start. Can be Bhairav or like Maya Malagola or Kalyani or any of those parallel ragas, wherein we are introduced to either all strong notes, weak notes, or bold notes, and we breathe in and we hold a one whole breath on one note, so that we are in totality able to understand that frequency in all its most purest form before we go into gamakas and connections. And so alignment to Shruti is extremely important form of training in Hindustani. Only then the other things.
So this is perfect. I hope everybody kind of got an idea of these different genres and the characteristics that everybody spoke about. So there are a lot of things that are common, but there are also a lot of things that make each of them very distinct. And I think it's not just enough to just say, okay, this is the characteristic of a form and jump into it. I think we need to also talk about how each of these forms are being trained, right? How do we train the next generation? Or how do we train our peers, etc.? And how do we train in multiple forms? Like Kalpana was also talking, right? She's film singer, Carnatic, everything. So I just want to direct my next question towards Lalita and Nisia, is really, how is training imparted in your genres? How do you train students?
Okay. So as I was mentioning, of course, I think we are going to talk a little bit later about who we take on as our students in the first place. The basic thing is then, for us at least, they need to hold a tune to begin with. Then only there is something to work with. So as I was mentioning earlier, we start with the breathing first, the abdominal breathing, or using the core. So there are some breathing exercises that we do, and then we do the vocalizations. So there are lots of vocal exercises to relax the inside of the mouth, to work with the resonance inside here, and obviously to increase the range. And in Western music, vowel exercises are extremely important, because we have to learn how to produce beautiful vowels, no matter what genre you're doing. Western genre I'm talking about. So the A, E, O, U. And these are the 5 vowels that we are working with. And we modify them slightly according to what genre that we are doing. So especially for classical vocal, I'm talking about Western classical, the emphasis is more on vertical space. So it's A, E, O, U when you sing. You don't do this when you're doing pop. It's much closer, though there is space at the back, because we still need to project a good sound. Okay, so there's a lot of work with space, placement, where the tongue is, how we use our resonance, singing behind the mask, and of course with the right support for breathing from the diaphragm. So these are things that we have to look at from the beginning, and of course with whatever repertoire that we choose, depending on the genre, we always have to look at all these things, so that there is always good tone coming through and very clear diction, of course.
Yes, as I earlier mentioned, I have to check whether the student can first carry a tune or sing a song in sur, in Shruti, that means, and also if they can align themselves to the Shruti, if I play a Tanpura or something. To me, Shruti alignment is basically inborn. That's what I feel over the period of teaching for more than 26 years. I have come to the conclusion that aligning to Shruti is inborn. If you can listen to the Tanpura and hit your Sa, then I think the rest of the work is much, much easier. If not, I think they should refrain from learning and go for more hearing and enjoying music. Yes, once we do start, it is all on Shruti, and then we have vocal exercises. We can take any rag, either introduce bold notes, Shuddh ragas, or combination of both. And we go into expanding the octave, 2.5, 3 octaves. Expand the octave first, then we go into speed, so swaras, speed. So all these alankars or a bunch of exercises basically address breathing, range expansion, octave expansion, and getting to know the swaras of that particular rag, getting friendly with them. So these are the starting things that the student has to go through. And of course, work very hard.
What age would you say that you start accepting students? At what age?
I think about 7, not before that, because even if we want them to focus for at least half an hour or 25 minutes,
right?
Starting around 7 is the.
Yeah. Is that the same for Western and Carnatic too?
Technically, like younger children, just doing songs with them would be, see, there are always exceptions, but generally with younger students, it's just about learning songs and stuff. I mean, provided that they, are able to sing in pitch. But because, the muscles, the diaphragm muscles, the capacity of the lungs need to be a little bit more mature in order to accept the kind of Western vocal training. I normally accept about 11 or 12, like for serious vocal training. Yeah.
Ram, would you say that's the same for Carnatic?
I think it depends on whether the child has a musical background. So that will largely determine whether, even at an age of 3 or 4, if you're able to, align to the Shruti, to me, whether you're 3 or 4 or 30 or 40 or 60 or 70, as long as you align to the Shruti, I mean, as both of them rightly said, in general, you can say that probably around 7 or 8 or over that is when you typically expect an average, child to even comprehend what aligning to Shruti means. But I mean, typically in Carnatic music, since it's typically passed over generations, and the kids are exposed to music at a very young age. So what happens is, aligning to Shruti, maybe not to the perfection that Srimati Lalita ma'am has been mentioning, but at least they would know what it is to, separate the 2 rishabhams or the 3 rishabhams or the gandharams or the madhyamam. So mentally, they might have an image of where the notes are placed, simply because they have been exposed to music right from a very young age. So, yeah.
It's mostly children coming from the musical family, like somebody like you also, I would say. You're exposed to a lot of music even before you're born. It's very easy to intuitively understand these things rather than explaining, Sorry to interject.
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly said, I myself am an exception. I mean, I started learning, but I didn't start learning very formally. I mean, my father did not teach me Sarali Varase or Janta Varase. True. He just taught me a song while I was like 2.5. I don't even know when I started singing, to be honest. So I have to give it back to the society. When somebody comes and says that, I mean you learned at 2.5, 3, and why aren't you teaching somebody else? I mean, I have to be fair here. So that's the thing. And going back to a broader question of the practice. Oh, I'm sorry. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, I have another question to ask you, Ram and Kalpana, both before we kind of have to wrap up this segment. Is really looking at, as a teacher, what is the criteria in accepting a student? I'm sure you all get a lot of requests to teach students, how do you kind of decide? Like, I know you've talked a little bit about, okay, family, background, intuition to music, Shruti, all of that we get. Above and beyond that, how do you choose students? And if so, do you just accept everybody and then give it 5-6 months time and then decide what's working, what's not working?
Ram sir.
Sure. Okay. Honestly speaking, I don't care about the student's background. The first thing is I sent in the last 3 years, I have not had any time to take in any students. Only my students teach. But even before that, I send them like a boilerplate of my expectations, and that serves as a filter, and that's extremely uninviting, and it's scary. So that's the first filter. So probably like about 2 or 3 out of like 20 or 25 would even go beyond that. So once they go beyond that is when I ask them to first audit my classes that I teach to other students. That is just to test their patience and their commitment to time and effort. So I teach other students and they have to first listen to those classes for the first 4 or 5 months. And then I get like a commitment not only from the student, but also from the family members and the people who are surrounding the periphery of their music. Because it's an investment of my time and effort, as well as the child's time and effort, as well as the parents' time and effort. Because I mean, you can do like a million things these days, right? I mean, it's not like we are in the 60s in Kumbakonam, like where the 2 options that you have is like Carnatic music and Bharatanatyam. It's not like that, right? You have like a million options these days. So it's important for me to use my time wisely and also ensure that the person is using their time wisely. So the commitment on time and effort. So I tell them like, even if you have tests, I mean, tests or exams or whatever it is cannot be an excuse for you to say that, you know what, I did not practice today. So before they come to class, I mean, every day they have to practice at least like 1.5 hours. And so during class days, they have to practice even more. And before coming to class, they have to practice. And when they come here, I teach them only for like 20-25 minutes, but all the 25 minutes will be teaching. Like I won't go over the stuff which they should have done because of their practice and they missed it out. If that is the case, then they just leave out, that's all. And I mean, the moment, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone knows here, the moment they say sa, we know that how much they have practiced. So that's good enough for us to know whether it's worth the next 20-25 minutes. So.
Yeah. For me, as Ram sir said, background doesn't have to be a criteria to choose the children, because I have seen the contrary cases. A musician's child who is like 14 to 15 years old, who's been born, both the mother and the father, they both were musicians, and the child is unfortunately completely pitch deaf. And I've seen a farmer's child who is able to sing the very minute nuances and the brihas, which actually has left me all the time I was so puzzled to look at such kind of talented people. But as everybody rightly said, just I generally make them sing anything. If they, and I don't take children like at 4, 5. Though my father trained me from the age of 4, but still I don't accept students at that particular age. I believe that theoretical concepts should also be taught to them. So the rational kind of approach is needed. That is what I feel personally. So I teach theoretical concepts for which at least they must be, for today's generation, at least 10 years must be like completed. In order to tell them sa and the frequency, rishabam is more than the shadjamam. If I have to tell them, they should understand what is called frequency. I just speak about the concept of sound, what is called frequency, and or range, everything. So before I start my practical classes, I generally teach them the theory. And for me, I still always hope for a miracle, always keeping high hopes. For example, if they just come with only, okay, they are able to just catch the frequency of sa, and they are able to align little at least to the tambura or to the shruti box or whatever, I give them the span of time for 6 months. Though as a teacher, I can assist them in the very beginning stage. But still, today's generation people, children and their parents are like kind of very determined, or another way I can use the word called little adamant, and they are like so blindly sure that their children will definitely do something in music. So in that aspect, I take at least maximum the period of 6 months, and I make sure that the student practices whatever the lessons I give. It's like, how can we say, if I give the medicine, if a doctor gives the medicine properly, if the ailment is not cured, then you can be assured then either the doctor should be wrong, giving the wrong treatment to the patient, or the patient is suffering from some other illness.
Right.
So the conclusion part becomes very easy for me, and also to convince the student as well as their parents. 6 months, if they are practicing something, if you don't see even a bit, an iota of improvement, then that's we can be assured that that's not their cup. We can very I that gives me a lot of confidence to convince them that no, this is not for you. You better take something else as your profession or whatever.
Absolutely. I think it's really fascinating that you said you teach the theory before the practice. That is really, that's new to me, and I like it.
And I make it very, I'm very particular about teaching the Carnatic basics, because my root starts from that. So I'm very particular about my teaching is like, it is completely 2 pillars, like the 72 Melakarta ragams and the heptatonic scales and the 35 talams. And then comes the same talam in different nadas and everything, all the panjanada, whatever. So if a person is not able to do anything with these lessons, I can very easily say, no, this child will not be fit enough to take music as their mainstream career, or even as a passion.
That child is Kalpana, that's me. I was, because my family is into Carnatic music and dance, I was very much into dance, but I went to learn music for 2 years. I don't think I learned anything. I was in a group class and I sang, but I don't think I know what I sang for 1 hour. But anyway, at the end, the conclusion was, I don't think this girl could sing. Maybe she should just dance. And I think that was a good decision. But just to wrap up this whole training segment, Prakash, I'm sure you have ideas on the health aspects of training, right? Do you want to just talk a little bit of that before we move into the next section?
Yeah, interesting observations made by all of them, and be it whatever genre they're singing, everybody focused on Shruti alignment and, the throw of the voice, resonance aspect, and the breath support. So that is fundamental, but that's all at the what you see at the output. But most important, first thing is the aptitude, the psychocognitive aspect. They can understand, grasp, and so singing is a serious activity which requires so much of understanding of what the teacher is telling and absorbing it and then trying to reproduce it. So that the grasp and to develop, I think around the age will be around 7.5 to 8, maybe the right thing to do. Even structurally, I would think the biological systems are adequately mature for us to take the rigors of training. And when you heard all of them, they were all talking about how serious training it's going to be. And so it's important for us to, produce the sound which is, which is strong, which means the system has to be developed well. So that is the age. Apart from what they have told, I would think the posture, right from the beginning, you have to talk about the posture. And the posture alignment gives the support for the breath. And if the breath is adequately triggered well, the voicing becomes much more comfortable. If the voice is comfortable, then comes your resonating cavities, where diction, pronunciation becomes very, very important. So these are the different other aspects which comes in the training. And many times when these are not addressed in the training issues, it becomes a health impediment. It lands up in a hyper-functioning system because there's always compensating for something which is not working adequately, either the breath or the resonance or the voice itself. So I think that is how the training and the health component merge. Okay, if that answers your question.
Yes, it definitely does. And I think this is a good segue into our next segment, which is about voice health, right? And it really comes down, and I want to ask all of our panelists or anybody who would like to answer is, do teachers talk about voice health in their classes? And how does a teacher know when there's a student who needs help, right? At whatever age. So anybody can answer. Sure, Nisi.
Yes, even from the word go, like from the very first lesson itself, we do talk about vocal health, about the things that they need to do to be able to keep their tone nice and clean. So we do discuss that. And I have come across students who've had vocal health problems, vocal cord problems, because the minute I hear a certain hoarseness or when they start cracking, and sometimes, something that they could have handled easily doesn't come easily to them anymore, and it's not because they have a cold or anything like that. And sometimes, the suddenly their range becomes very deep suddenly. So fortunately or unfortunately, I've actually told these students, please go and get your vocal cords checked with an ENT. And I'm again, fortunately, unfortunately, I haven't been wrong. When I tell them that they have issues with their voice, so some of them have strained it prior, some of them have developed vocal nodules, and I'm able to hear these things, and I talk to them about it. And also excessive shouting, screaming, sports day in school, you know how it is, right? And when they come to you for vocal lessons, they're like, miss, I don't think I can sing today. I said, see, this is what happens. Of course, for them it's fun and all that, but if they cannot continue this kind of abuse of the vocal cords, I will say. So because we are aiming for a nice clean sound, and there are other factors as well, what they eat, what they drink, temperature. I mean, there's so many things that come into play, and obviously, not using the abdominal support enough and keeping putting strain on their vocal cords.
Yeah, absolutely. The food habits and those kind of effects. Vaishnavi, do you want to do you want to spotlight a little bit on that, on some of the food habits that are important for singers and their effects?
There are people say that you shouldn't have cold stuff or you shouldn't have spicy stuff, but I feel at the end of the day, each person is different, and if you eat or drink as per what your body accepts, as per your constitution, you're going to be okay. But there are always certain things that will do good to your voice, like sipping water, warm water, and steam inhalation. So these are like good habits that you can develop, so that your voice stays, for maintenance of your voice. But every musician, every singer needs to find what really helps them, or you know there are certain things that will affect them and certain things that won't. So it's up to each singer to decide for themselves, find out about themselves and be aware, and then avoid those what whichever doesn't help them.
First time I heard Prakash say in one of our workshops, saying that coffee is terrible for singers, and my heart broke. I don't drink coffee, but I know every singer.
I'm a coffee lover. I just love coffee. I
Most
fall in
most
love
South
with
Indians
coffee.
are most
Filter
South
coffee.
Indians are. But
I was like, how are singers singing if the coffee is not good for them?
well,
Yeah,
caffeine has its own effect, but yeah, it causes dryness and it stimulates acidity. So in that sense, it's bad. But having an overdose of anything does damage the system. But I mean, food habits, there is no specific food which does any good for your voice box, or there is nothing which will really make it really bad. It depends upon how the system, as Vaishnavi said, how you are adapting. But there are generic things which generally triggers acidity. So food is related to acidity. So acidity is something which all singers should try to prevent. And if there is acidity, it's going to cause more damage to the voice box. So it's very important that they stay away from acid-provoking food, so anything which will stimulate the acidity in the stomach. Another important thing is the timing of the food and the way you eat the food. So eat at regular intervals. Don't starve. Okay, eat at frequent intervals so that there is no acidity. And second is chew well and then swallow. Many times we are listening to somebody or watching something, and then you don't pay enough attention on chewing. You just gulp food, and that becomes. And many times, especially the dinner, is taken quite late in the evening, and then they go to bed immediately, and that causes more acidity. So that is something which generally what to avoid is all the things which starts with C, maybe caffeine, cola, cake, chocolates, and it's cocoa. So anything which starts with C will be, yeah, they're going to. No, but see, the rigors of training is so much. Once you are ready to perform, you better work on the health so that you have the voice to perform.
Absolutely. So I also see like Kalpana, Lalita, and Ram, all of them vigorously shaking their head. Have you all had these kind of similar problems, and how did you kind of solve them, and how did you adjust your system to these sort of acidity being the main real critical?
Yeah, I sort of gave up coffee, and even sleep affects the voice, I have found, or stress also affects the voice to some extent.
Sleep as in the lack of sleep?
Lack of sleep, yes.
100%.
So even students, one can make out from their voice, and many of them I have sent them to ENTs for regular. They should have regular checkups if they have some issues. Yeah, so we look into that at a very
Yes, definitely. Food
disciplined manner.
habits. Because
Unfortunately,
travel-
there are some students who are a little bit adamant and think that there's nothing wrong. And kind of wait for a whole year until it gets worse, and then they finally go and ask, like, I told you so.
I
We
know,
should have,
same thing.
done it earlier. Some of them are a little bit, stubborn about these things.
What
Unfortunately,
are the effects of alcohol on your system?
Alcohol causes a lot of dryness to the system. It also induces acidity if you're not taking with alcohol. Alters sensorium. Definitely does not allow you to focus or concentrate. And and you heard them all say again and again, alignment with Shruti, and the singer is the lead in the stage. And if that person loses track because of altered sensorium, then definitely, so alcohol is definitely no.
Unless you do years of riyaz with alcohol and singing.
Well, that's a bad advice, I would think, because what happens is the dose of alcohol keeps on increasing. So, in fact, there are interesting studies in audiology where they say your alertness increases with low dose ethanol. Okay, it's called mismatch negativity. With a test, they will be able to identify that your brain the cells priming is much enhanced with a low dose ethanol. But the unfortunate thing is today's low dose, tomorrow it becomes a little more than today's low dose. So it's incremental, and that is detrimental to the voice and the person. So it is not advised at all. No smoking, no alcohol.
Smoking.
No smoking. Smoking is even dangerous than alcohol.
I also advise no ice water or anything cold from the fridge, because I feel maybe doctor can point out if it's not okay. I feel that when we talk, we use a lesser range than when we start singing and training them over 2.5, 3 octaves. So many of them start coughing when they go to lower octave. They are not audible. It takes a couple of months to hit the lower octave pa or ma, and the same up, in the upper octave also. So then the voice is actually going through uncharted phase, and that time they develop some cough or something. And I, of course, advise them that looking at the body temperature, that should probably not jolt it with extreme other side temperatures, warm water. Maybe I am wrong, but it works.
Normal temperature water is always preferred, but there is no problem if a person is used to drinking something cold. If the body is acclimatized to drinking cold things, it's fine. It depends upon several other factors. If you are prone to developing upper respiratory infections because after you've exposed yourself to cold water or cold drinks, then you probably need to avoid them. Otherwise, something which people are used to, the body naturally adapts and acclimatizes. And you should train that too. And so once you start doing it, I mean, I don't want any singer to be a saint. You don't really require to let go everything. You need to learn to adapt and allow the body to acclimatize. Be aware of the bodily changes and how the things are changing as and when your habits are changing. So watching all of these is very important for the singer, and taking care of that health aspect becomes very crucial both in training and in performing. So if you start from the base itself, the training sinks in you very well. And so you know these are not, you really can't explore much on these. And then it goes all the way till you want to perform.
There might be some couple of exceptionary things. Like I am like very fond of the aroma of coffee, particularly being a South Indian. But there have been few days in my life where I have just survived only on coffee, because I had a lot of recordings or in one particular time I didn't have solid food, because for me, when I eat more of solid food, if my stomach is full, then my diaphragm gets with obstacles to perform the breathing properly. So I just always try to have half stomach food, that's it. But caffeine has really sometimes helped me to stay awake all the time. Sometimes it helped me, but I'm not here to vouch for it. But still, sometime when I feel like all said and done, I'm an artist. Like if I'm emotionally stuck with something, if somebody is going to snatch away something from me, which I really love, so that shouldn't become an add-on stress to me. Because for me, like I have given my extraordinary performances, though I was physically ill, but mentally I was like very happy and fine.
So I believe habits are best cultivated through awareness and knowledge. So once you are aware of what it's going to do to you and your body, and when you know what is the effect of it and the counter effect of it, then you know to balance it. So as I told you, no singer needs to be a saint. Okay, so you just need to learn to manage this pretty well, so that it goes on well.
There's a question about AC, which again I remember Lalita saying in our Reiki thing that she can't handle AC.
I have tried it so many times in so many countries and so many halls.
Me too.
Just 10 minutes and
I'm sure Ram will vouch also in all the sabhas and the recording studios.
Yeah, recording studio, I go all wrapped up and till I'm supposed to sing, and it's
but still in recording studios, in voice booth, it's a must to switch off the AC because it generates some sound.
Exactly. So till such time, I wrap myself up and sit there till I'm, it's all off and I'm ready.
It's possibly worse because your temperature keeps shifting, right? It's cold and hot. But I just want to bring in Ram and Vaishnavi here to talk a little bit about Party Vaidyam, which is the Tamil word, but basically talking about alternate approaches, right? Not necessarily scientific, that people have done for many years. And what are your thoughts on it? Have you tried it? Recommend it? When do you know that it's not working enough and you need to see a doctor? Ram and Vaishnavi, I'd love if you could chime in here.
Go for it, Vaishnavi.
Ladies first, Vaishnavi, let's go.
So we've heard of pepper and turmeric milk and pepper. So it's supposed to be very good for the throat. Pepper personally works for me, but I try to avoid milk because I feel milk causes phlegm formation for me. I don't know if it's mucus. Yeah, I don't know. So I feel like wanting to clear my throat. I don't know if it's only for me or.
No,
So in that way, Party Vaidyam hasn't really worked for me. But honey and pepper do work for me. Yes.
Yes, they work for me too.
Ram,
So, I mean, just getting to the broader question of food habits and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, as much as I agree with most of what everyone said about being aware of what works for you the best. See, it's like practice. Some people practice. Some people don't practice, but they give great performances. So the question is, avoiding certain things which are known to cause irritation to throat. It might work for you, but why take a chance? That's the question. If you can avoid, just avoid. Now, that's the least kind of respect that you can give to the art form. Like this, it's not much of a sacrifice, right? I mean, it's just a temporary satisfaction that you're getting, a temporary high that you're getting out of having, let's say, an ice cream or a chocolate and whatever it is, right? So that's the way I treat it. I mean, I have had chocolates, I have had cakes, nothing has happened to me, but I actively avoid them. Not because it affects me, It's because that I feel happy. It's like the kind of sacrifice that I make to the art. It's like practicing. I mean, just I practice before every concert. I practice every day. I practice a lot, but doesn't mean that every concert is a success, right? But at least you're not guilty for the fact that the concert is a failure because you did not practice. The same way, I mean, sometimes your voice might not work, and you should not think that this is karma. That day I had ice cream. Probably that's what is working against me today. So I think it's just a question of the respect and the kind of commitment that you have towards the art, which which makes you avoid certain things, even if you know for a fact that it gives you a temporary high. Yeah, I see a fruit on that. I see dosh. Yeah, I would like to have it, but you know what? I'm a singer. So when people say that your voice is good, you take it, right? So what is it that you give it back? These are the sacrifices. It's not a big sacrifice, right? It's not a life-changing sacrifice. It's like a 1 minute or a half a minute thing.
So I would call this as toning the body. Okay, so it's just like, I mean, I compare singers to athletes. So when you are an athlete, your body has to be ready to perform the sport you are engaging in, right? Same way, singing is like an active sport. It's like playing a football on the ground or running on the track. So it requires that the coordination of the body and the adaptability of the body to suit a particular situation, whether it is a cold environment or you have traveled the last night, not had slept proper sleep, and you probably got a food which was only available that time. So those small changes should not affect the body. So how do you do that? You start toning your body. Over time, you develop how you adapt to making these changes possible for you to perform and continue to work on it. That's how. So it's as Ram said, I agree. Don't think of the sacrifice. It's cultivating. It's not sacrifice. It's actually cultivating your system towards better performance. And compare yourself to a sports athlete. So they would do that. You will also.
I think, as Vaishnavi rightfully said, each of our system is so unique and different, and so over a period of time, we come to know what suits us and what doesn't, and what gives what reaction. Accordingly we have to equip ourselves.
If I may just add, sorry,
Carry on.
Yeah, this analogy between music and sports is something that I use with my students a lot, because there are some students who just practice the day before the class, and they come in and very well that they haven't done what they're supposed to. And this is what I tell them, because it's exactly the same. I say, if you have a track and field event tomorrow, does it mean that you train today for it? No, you'll have to, it's weeks and months, right? For even a 200-meter sprint. It's exactly the same with music, whether it's your voice or an instrument. You have to keep at it, because if you just leave it even for 3-4 days and you get back to it, you already find the difference. So it's the same kind of thing as Dr. Prakash was saying. And just one quick point about the smoking part. I'm not advocating for it, but there are a lot of rock singers who actually smoke, because when they smoke, the vocal cords get inflamed and they have that grating sound, which is what they're looking for in their genre. Just to bring that up.
That must affect their voice in the long term, right?
I'm sure it does, but they want that kind of quality, Yeah.
So there is your voices are hired for some qualities, and so there are tricks which works for certain types of voices, and so you just know the effect and the counter effect, and so you again learn to work with it. So that's where the coach makes a difference. So when you have an advisor on how much to indulge, then you know how to manage it.
Just a small point which I wanted to make. Yeah, I mean, certain foods affect, certain moods affect us. All that is fine, but I mean, this is slightly philosophical. But the more you practice and more you understand your voice, you know to navigate these issues. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure every one of us had problems when we have had several concerts. It's not like every concert their voice behaves one specific great way. I mean, certain concerts your voice doesn't hit the upper range. Certain concerts it doesn't go lower ranges. Certain concerts the speed that you usually sing in, it doesn't come through. certain concepts you cannot hold a note. That doesn't mean that we haven't practiced. But the more you practice, in your practice sessions, you would have come across these situations. So you know to navigate it successfully. So it's not that successful performers don't have issues. They have issues, but they know how to navigate it because they have practiced enough to come across these similar situations and then manage it. So at the end of it, food, habits, everything, yeah, true. But whatever the consequences of these, if you have practiced enough, you would have been familiar with the situation of those adversary situations that you'll be able to navigate, is my opinion.
What you said was very insightful. I mean, you're so attuned with your body and your voice, you're able to foresee a problem, though the problem could be different every day. And I think this comes back to my first question of, as teachers and even as singers, when do you know that's like your capacity of your singing and your ability versus you actually actually needing to go see an expert about this, case in point, Dr. Prakash. So, I mean, so the question, and I think, and all of you said that, you are very sensitive to knowing when your student needs help. And I honestly really think that your students are very lucky, because there are many, many people I know who are not just aware of the fact that when is it time, like when is it too late to go see a specialist? When do you need to go do that? And I think there's a lot of hesitance to go see an expert, right? To just go see a doctor about it. And Prakash, I know you must be dealing with this a lot, right? People must be coming at various different after an injury, right? And sometimes it's hard. You always wish, why didn't you come 1 month ago or 1 year ago, right? How do you deal with that? And why do you think there is this hesitance to go see a doctor?
I would think this hesitance is basically part of the culture, and it's not only it's not untrue in the Western thing. They're not very easily meeting the doctors because they are working, and many times there is a notion which most singers do, and the teachers of the gurus of the singing community also say, you keep on practicing, it'll improve. But it's important to know that we practice the right thing. So if we keep on practicing the wrong thing, it will lead to more hyperfunction, it will lead to more damage of the system. So it's important when 1 or 2 times you've tried and it's not getting correctly, then there is a problem. It could be either it could be because of a functional problem, or maybe there is a structural change, and this happens. Or there could be some biological changes also, because the person is going through changes in the body. The singing may be their full activity, but there are other things which the person is doing. So because of that, there are life changes which happens, which is natural physiological changes. Or there could be some pathologies. You have contracted an infection, or you have developed some trauma or a damage somewhere, and so that also causes. So it's important for you to take cognizance of these body changes also, and not blindly think with practice I will resolve everything. So it's very important for us to make a difference, and that's where the teacher becomes important. So when they observe the struggle, they would be able to classify whether it is a mental block, it's a more an emotional struggle, or are they physically struggling. When they see consistent physical struggle, where you can see that their breathing is not adequate, they're not able to maintain the breath support required, the voice is getting hung up somewhere, it's all focused at the back, it's not coming forward, it's not moving, or the nuances which they're learning is never coming, the sangati, it's not coming at all. So that's where they realize, after repeated instructions and the student honestly trying, still they are struggling, then I think it warrants an evaluation. People have to consult and see, is my body all right? Is everything going okay? Not to go with a fear factor, but with an intention to find out how can I fix it?
Yeah.
What is happening? If everything is fine, then I know at least my technique has to be corrected.
Yes.
That's very important. And
Yeah,
that's
sometimes, doctor, when a common cold or a phlegm infected the throat, it continues for weeks and they don't get well, then a couple of weeks later, I suggest that it might be, infection leading to something else, better to go and consult, otherwise don't come for the next class, things like that. So because sometimes you need to literally blackmail them and tell them to go. because somewhere there might be a fear or a denial that, okay, I can't get anything and I'm fine. Like, I should just go to the doctor.
So this is a common thing in
So
the system.
those things lead to, can lead to anything in the vocal parts.
And I also want to say that most of the time you can find a solution, and there is a solution. If only you go out and seek it. And that for that, I think the right time, the right person, the right resources is super important. And hopefully these kind of sessions will, shed light on that. You don't have to, like you said, Prakash, there's no fear factor. It's just a question of why, just let me go check it out anyway. You don't lose anything. Yeah. And I think like Lalita was saying, is because it's also invisible, right? It's not like a skin infection that you can see building. And I think that's probably why you
also
feel
suddenly when the voice becomes very husky, a smooth, high-pitched voice suddenly becomes extremely husky by a couple of months, you can make out something is drastically wrong.
So what we find when we evaluate, we look at two things. One is there is an effect of the trauma. You can see some changes structurally. And then sometimes there is no effect of the trauma, but there are compensations. And then these compensations can be because of an increased vocal demand. The teacher has set a target and you have to produce that. And so you have kept on trying it again and again and again in a faulty way, in an effort to perfect it. So it is an increased demand. There could be inadequate time for recovery. You have not given adequate rest in between. That also leads to hyperfunction. So you, just like how you have to work to train, you also need to relax to train, and it's motor learning. Okay, and so it's very important for you. The singing is psychocognitive and motor. So every time it's paced learning, which allows the person to perfect the thing. So it's important. And then emotional stress is another factor which may lead to a hyperfunction, which over time builds up and then ends up in a problem. And there could be associated vocal, non-vocal practices like constant throat clearing and trying to imitate voices or trying to produce some sound effects. All these things can also lead to some where you don't really see a trauma, but it is all temporary. But over time, the pattern changes, and sometimes people forget the normal, natural way they produce sound, and they keep on harping on correcting this, end up finding more struggle and difficulty in getting the right voice fixed.
These are some of the things from the surveys you've done, am I right?
Yeah, these are surveys have given us a lot of information to understand how this music itself is approached, right from who gives this information to when is it given, what happens when it is given, why there is apprehension. There's generally a apprehension which is not uncommon in any genre. Everybody, there is a problem. In the health, one more aspect is your hearing health. I think Vaishnavi should probably add a little as an audiologist. Hearing and all the sensory aspects are very important for singers. Hearing and vision. In fact, last night I had an interesting question from a very senior speech pathologist and audiologist where he said, would you address something about visual challenges in singing? How do you train and so sensory inputs are also important, and hearing health is so vital for the singer. Aligning to Shruti, hearing peripheral sense to a central level is very important.
Most important thing, Dr. Saab, is hearing.
I just would like to just add one important point regarding this aspect is that which was eventually told and I observed from people like SPB sir or Chitramma or a singer like Vani Jairamamma. The thing is, their kalpitam is like very strong. So they generally don't do much of the rehearsals. For example, when a composer says about a tune, I've seen how Vani Jairamamma works or SPB sir or Chitramma. They just write the notation because I belong to that school. I come from that school. So they just write the notation and their brain sings it inwardly. It's like they don't like they don't sing it like frequently. Like they just look at the notation. Okay, this is how it's going to sound, and they just plan. They work. They do their brain mapping, everything in their brain, and then just hit it at the point exactly.
So Nisha will be able to help that. It's called marking. So they keep rehearsing in their mind and then they produce it.
So that is how we do. In a way, it actually reduces your voice strain. Instead of singing it 10 times, 20 times again and again and spoiling your throat, if you keep your ears and, as you said, your peripheral devices like your ears and your brain strong with the notes, like how if even I sing a ga to a ma to daivatam, it should actually sound inside. We must be able to hear to it. Then it will be easy for us to, like, to some extent, definitely we can reduce the strain for a singer.
Yeah, absolutely. Vaishnavi, do you want to add to that about hearing the singers?
Yeah. So singers basically use their sense of hearing as a tool for course correction. So it acts like a feedback loop. So they listen to what they say, what they're singing, and then uh, they try to see if it matches what they was trying to sing, the expected and the outcome, and then they try to course correct. So not only do they need to use their hearing for pitch matching, they need to use their hearing to follow the fellow musicians, to keep tempo. So all these things, hearing helps. So another thing, so if there's a hearing loss, so not only do these functions get affected, they also they also do not know how to compensate correctly with their voice, do correct course corrections. So that might lead to vocal abuse. So it's very, very, very important that the hearing is preserved. So in genres where there's a lot of decibel levels, it's recommended to use protection devices during practice, at least, if not on the stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think in hearing, one more aspect is middle ear infections. Many times, it alters your pitch perception. So middle ear infections are very common when you have upper respiratory problems, and then you develop an ear infection. And many times singers travel a lot, and so there could be chances of contracting an infection, and that can also alter the pitch perception. There will be a blocked sensation. The nose and the ears will get blocked, and it gets plugged on. So that's again, we're not only talking of the neural deafness, we can also think of temporary short changes which happens, and then that causes an alignment problem, alignment issues.
Absolutely. So I think there's a lot to take in here, but I just want to be mindful a little bit about time. I want to spend the next 10 minutes talking a little bit about our last segment, which is about performance, which is super important in this whole segment of this discussion, from training to voice health. It all comes down to performance, right? And as you as singers, that is the final element, and that is the reason we're doing all of this. So I think we should just spend a little bit of time on that, and then we can move on to the Q&As. I know there have been a lot of questions in the chat box, and we'll definitely get to them shortly, but I want to just jump in a little bit. Maybe Kalpana, we can start off with you with the segment of performance of the speaking voice and the singing voice. And I thought it was very insightful in the recce when you talked about how it was the same for you. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
It's completely different for me. The other way, it's other way around. I use my speaking voice as well as the falsetto, because when I try to sing Western classical or some of the film melodies like Lag Ja Gale, some of the songs like this, this is my falsetto. I can't say Lag Ja Gale. No, it will not sound good for that particular style of singing. When I sing Carnatic, I use my chest voice. For example, this was actually sung by Sudha Raghunathan madam. So just to, cinema singing is basically imitation. You can't much deviate from the originality of the composition or even the voice production. But the same for this film, if I try to sing Shankara Nada Sharira Para, there I use my falsetto. Though it is a male song, I try to use my falsetto and I present it. So and sometimes when we work on the background score, sometimes we have to sing like sometimes like this, sometimes it will be very cranky sometimes. It's like very challenging, mind wobbling sometimes. So people who are able to keep up, not necessary. See, versatility is like film singing. It is a choice made by the singers. I became a versatile singer not because of the talent or anything, because I have, as a person, I have the inquisitiveness to explore a lot of things. And I tried, and sometimes some of the genres, some of the genres, the voice will not cooperate. I understood my biological limitation, as well as because, for example, I love the style flamenco and gypsy kind of singing. I just tried it once and my voice went, "Bleh." That's it. I couldn't sing for the next 10 to 12 days. This was the condition. And I was affected with nodules. That was the time I met Dr. Prakash. Well, these limitations, sometimes when you try to explore, it's always like an adventurous, a traveler's inquisitiveness. You find something new, you really like it. So it's like a seasonal approach. I've even explored trying rock songs on the stage, like AC/DC and other people like Queen and Def Leppard, something like that. Some of the songs I was able to do, though I have the alto range. I was able to sing some of the songs. Some of the songs, no, it didn't work for me. It didn't work out for me. So I dropped it. So it's like, goes, chalega, jitna chalte hai, utna, that's it. It's like my policy. So it's like more of an artistic mind approach, just exploring things about it.
Also, apart from that, one should catch the flavor of that particular genre
Exactly.
to do justice to it. If you're not, you can't be versatile in all flavors. To sing a ghazal or you can't sing it with the heaviness of a Carnatic, raga or something. You have to catch that light breeziness of the ghazal and the Urdu diction. If not, you should not even touch it. So that is the first criteria. And then, of course, the voice, whether you are able to, like you're able to go falsetto in D and D sharp or C sharp, where most of the duets and most of the songs are composed, because it's more brighter in terms of when you have to make an impact in 3 to 4 minutes in a scene. It has to be that whatever statement you make has to be very bright and hard hitting. So naturally, the songs are composed in C sharp D. You have to have that range or cultivate that range, riyaz in that range in order to sing it there. You have to sing it there. There's no choice for females, at least. So those who are successful are God gifted, or they have cultivated that space.
Yeah, for us it is more of assuming the characterization. What more?
Yeah,
more
that comes later. First, you should have this. No, only then you think of that.
Yes. But I have sometimes encountered with the background scores where they ask me to sing. It'll be like a scene in the mosque or some climax scene happening. Muslims like fighting something. They will ask us to sing something in Arabic style. They'll ask us to sing some gibberish syllables. Something for that style, something like that. It doesn't come by studying a book or something. It's more of an imitation. We get exposed to a lot of things, listen. Actually, film music is a mini world music, I should say. We listen to, and even for Western classical, sometimes there are a lot of people, I at least learned a little bit. There are a lot of people who sing better than me, who have not known the basics of Western classical or what is called opera. It's all sounding. They just listen to something.
That's what you instinctively connect to that genre, as I said. Also, you should have that capacity to sing in C sharp and D sharp, which is then what you sing comes much later, or what you're exposed to sing or supposed to.
Nisha and Ram, a little bit about the singing voice and the speaking voice, especially from the male-female perspective. If you'd like to add it. Nisha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, my singing voice is very different from my speaking voice, especially when it comes to Western classical singing. It's completely different. In that sense, music theater is more of the natural voice, because there are a lot of songs where you can belt. These are called belters. So you use more of the speaking and the chest voice. With rock as well, that is also more of the natural speech voice. But for Western classical, it's completely different. We're basically mixing the registers together. It's not completely chest, it's not completely head voice, but it's a mix. So that the idea is that you should sound at the bottom of your range the same way as you sound on top. It's like it should be the same consistency all the way through, and not have that glitch when you go from your chest voice to your head voice. For example, this is the glitch I'm talking about. If I start with a 100% chest voice, and then that glitch happens. So in Western training, classical training, we don't want that glitch. It has to be the same. So it depends on how you mix the registers so that we can get the consistency of tone.
I mean, honestly speaking, I haven't analyzed much on how different the speaking voice and the singing voice is. Because I mean, I want to be comfortable whatever I do, whether it is singing or talking. I don't want to strain my voice. So in that regard, I mean, I love to talk, but I don't have an option. I don't talk much. I choose not to talk much. So
Shall
that's
I?
the thing.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So by the way, happy birthday, Dr. Prakash.
Yes.
Oh
No,
yeah.
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Talk.
We just thought to wish at the end, but
I see. I
Maybe
mean,
we
I'm
can
ahead of
sing
the
the
curve here.
birthday song together.
go ahead.
Say something about
Yeah.
just sing us your movie.
So yeah, to be honest, like if I start thinking, I don't stop. So it's a bad route for me to take. So I'll start over analyzing. I'll be like, okay, you know what? This Rishabham usually doesn't sound like this now. It's so I just try to avoid thinking much about it. So I always keep a tab of how much I think, especially when it is related to my voice. And even now I'm speaking, probably this is not the best of my voice. I don't know. But if I want to think about it, I consciously put a stop to it and say that, you know what, I'm not thinking about it. As long as I'm not straining my voice, I don't feel a strain, I don't see any pain, and I don't sound strained, I am fine. So that's the way I keep it simple. Similarly, when I sing, I just ensure that I hit the soft spot and I don't strain my voice. And whatever practice it takes, uh, to make it sound less stressful or less strainful. Because I mean, it's my personal opinion that there is no one perfect voice. So it's just a question of how you navigate and present the best. So that's my take. So again, that gets back to how much you practice and how much you understand your voice. So everything finally rests on how you understand your voice through practice. And at some point in time earlier, somebody alluded, or a lot of people alluded to the fact that you mentally sing. It depends on which stage you're in. Have you built in that enough muscle memory for you to be satisfied that whatever you practice in your mind is going to get executed the way you think? Because for people who start, it's more about practicing physically until you get the voice to a specific threshold. And beyond that inflection point, yeah, you just offset your physical practice with your mental practice. Right. So you have to be aware, or the guru should be guiding them as to at which stage you are in to take more of physical practice versus more of mental practice, or the other way around.
Prakash, do you
So
want to add?
speaking and singing voice, though it comes from the same voice box, so it's important for singers to understand that it both comes from the same voice box, and you use the same mechanisms, biologically, the same mechanisms. Only thing is singing is more refined, and so you have a set things, as what they say as kalpita sangeetam, manodharma sangeetam. So you have certain boundaries in which you execute these singing. Uh, Two classical things which are important for singers to remember when they think of speaking and singing voices is, one is you should speak in your natural voice. So the males are low pitch, women are high pitch, and this is two broad distinctions. But the varieties, in between, also you should be careful that you don't strain while you are speaking. So if you are trying to have an imitated speaking voice, definitely it will have an effect on the singing voice. Second important thing is, while you're singing, you need to handle two parameters of the voice distinctly. One is volume, other one is pitch. Pitch and volume, though, are inbuilt while you speak. When I speak, if I increase my pitch, my volume also tend to increase. But in singing, they can handle them differently, and the singer needs to master that art. So that is one classic distinction. So the mechanisms in which you train the volume and the pitch are different. So if that aspect is told to the student or the performer, they will know how to balance that. So that's a classic distinction between a speaking and singing voice, apart from the melodies and nuances of any type of singing they may do. These are two important things I think you should know.
Absolutely. And I think with that is a great point to kind of conclude. I would like to now basically put all our panelists on the spotlight. And I'm going to give you like one point. If you can leave everybody with one message, right? Based on your style and based on your genre, that you want to move forward, like your words of wisdom almost, like, this is what I learned, please don't do this, that kind of a thing, you know. If you could all just, 30 seconds, like that's it, just one point. Mauricia, if we could start with you.
First thing is, don't have any delusions about what you can do with your voice. I think we had spoken about that earlier. Because there are some people who would like to become a musician, but they are not capable of it. First of all, you should not have any delusions. Okay. Number two, whatever genre that you take up, it doesn't matter whether it's Western, Indian, it doesn't matter. I think the most important thing is to take care of the vocal cords in such a way, as Ram Prasad was saying, we should not have any strain or stress. We should take as much strain and stress away from the vocal cords as much as possible, so that we maintain good the vocal cords are in good condition for many, many years, basically, because that's, especially for a person whose, career is professional singing, that's extremely important.
Yeah. Ms. Lalita, do you want to?
I feel if you are really passionate about what you're going to do, then you have to be disciplined. And again, if there is any small issue or something uncommon happening, unusual with your voice, you must consult, go ahead with the speech
Yes.
doctors or ENT and speech.
Absolutely.
But you must take up only serious singing or until you're cognitive of the fact that you are passionate and you can work very hard, because this music needs a lot of riyaz.
Yeah. Vaishnavi?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it's important for every singer to take the time and effort to understand their body and what works for them and what doesn't, and to not deviate from what they know works for them.
Discipline.
Kalpana?
Yeah, with the taking all the points, like I feel you should have a strong kalpitam knowledge about the musical part. You must be simple. In other words, you should be able to decode whatever you hear. Even a horn sound of a vehicle, you must be able to, on the level, you have to come to that level is my thing. And then pursue whatever you're passionate about, whatever truly aspires you. We are known to just prove ourselves. This is what I am. This is what, no. You enjoy something. Art is basically that, because art is the only profession where it's a profession as well as a passion. Both come into the picture. And of course, vocal health and discipline, as Madam also pointed that, having the right touch with the ENT doctors and the vocal health people, let it be the speech pathologist, to recognize your range and everything, all those stuff. And finally, all said and done, we are artists, and it involves aesthetic passion towards your art. You have to stay rooted to your culture, understand the tradition and culture of other exploring genres and other styles and different things. Whichever is suitable for you, you pursue with that. That's all.
Absolutely fantastic. Ram?
I mean, there is no shortcut for hard work. So just work hard, and it's a journey. I mean, you never know when. I mean, it's all in your mind, whether you are successful or unsuccessful, or all that is it's just in your head. As long as you enjoy the route, as long as you enjoy the journey, and listen to your guru and follow that, I think you should be fine.
Very well said.
I'm sorry
You
to
have to
interrupt.
enjoy the journey.
One point I'd like to add is time and effort. Those two must be kept in mind, because everybody thinks like today I practice, tomorrow I become something else. No, anything, as Ram sir said, even a journey to enjoy, whether it is a vacation or it's a serious trip, there is time factor that is involved, and there is an effort factor. Right effort at the right period of time would definitely, success becomes inevitable. That's what I think. Thank you. Sorry.
No, absolutely. It's a good point. Prakash, do you want to?
Okay, so I would like to emphasize two things. So one is don't look at exceptions, and that becomes the rule for you. So you can't, exceptions have to be treated as they are special people who have special performing abilities, and so they are different and they cannot be applied on you. And you as a person have their own, you have your own capabilities and vulnerabilities. So it's important for you to realize these two and balance it well. And if you do not learn to do that yourself, that's when you need to seek the guidance of your guru and sometimes health experts. So be it a speech language pathologist or a voice specialist or sometimes an ENT doctor. So that's very important. Second important,
Over to you.
Second important thing is um, that has two parts. One, singing is a very sensory motor experience. You need to hear, you need to produce. So you have to connect with these two fields. If you just hear and don't link it with your production, you will not be able to do it. And you produce and you don't hear yourself correctly, then again others won't accept you. So it is very important. And second important is a lot is to do with the general makeup of the person, the personality. So you have to cultivate your personality also as you advance in your singing career. And that happens through talking to people, understanding your own self. So the emotional vulnerabilities can be reduced if you keep working on building, just like your singing knowledge and vocal health, work on your personality also. Okay, physical fitness and personality adds it all to make you a successful performer. So it's very, very important. So these are my two take homes.
Beautifully said, sir. Well, very well said.
Very
I
nice.
think I'm going to have to frame that, make it into a little poster and frame it.
Sure.
Just want to conclude by saying, okay, so just to recap for everybody, so we discussed three big topics, right? One is the training, voice, vocal health, and performance. And training, we talked about what age to start, how do you train, what are the differences, what are the similarities. In vocal health, we talked about the different food habits, their effects, the toning of the body, and also when do you know, right? What is the difference between understanding personal limitations and when you need to go see an expert to help you deal with the problem? And most importantly, there is always a solution. And don't be afraid to go meet anyone to help you improve your form, because they're only going to help you on the journey. And don't wait it out. If you have a problem, probably just go. And as proof is in the pudding, that everybody here is here because they've understood, if they ever had a problem, that there's always a solution to it. And of course, coming to the performance side is, again, really in looking at, in terms of form and craft and passion and profession, that it all kind of comes together. And it is a lot of hard work, like Ram said. It is a lot of pursuing your dreams. It is a lot of passion, but at the same time, it also comes down to you just understanding what you're good at and how you can be the best version of yourself you are. And don't compare yourself to the exception. I think that is the biggest takeaway, is that especially as artists, being in the field of arts management, I always get clients who are always comparing themselves to one artist or the other, or one success and the other. But I think, like you said, it's a part of the journey, and it's about being intuitive and being connected to yourself and pursuing that goal. So with that, I think we can jump to the Q&A, though we're like 13 minutes over time. But Meenakshi, thank you.
No, you're not over time, because our panel is till 9. So we have time for Q&A.
We thought it was 8:30.
Yeah. So we have quite some, yeah. So we have a lot of questions. Shreya, you can also look at Q&A section and see if those are the relevant ones. But I have few. I noted down some of them. So one was to Dr. Prakash particularly. What causes someone not to hold the note of Shruti? Any help to provide to students with such difficulty?
Okay, most often times, if a person is unable to hold a note for a long duration, it may be a compromise with breath. Okay, so breathing may not be adequate. So if you have adequate breath support and the posture is also corrected, then usually holding a note for a long duration is possible. So breath compromises are the major issues. And sometimes it could be defects of the vocal cords also. But many times it is breathing than the vocal cord itself.
Yeah, and I think there's another question similar to this. I have a voice tone where even talking for 10-15 minutes at work or in office puts stains on my voice, after which singing gets very difficult. How do I train my voice under such conditions?
Is it for me? Okay. So voice fatigue is one of the major complaints of any singer. So tiredness is an indication of a long-standing problem, a faulty technique, or something which you're going to develop. So if your voice tires, it shows that there is something going wrong. And so speaking 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the voice is tiring, definitely there is something wrong, either in the speaking style or maybe it could be a speaking environment. The environment may be just noisy, and so you're talking loud, and then that could also add. So it definitely warrants a consultation. You have to meet the doctor to find out if everything is pretty okay. But and the contrast, if I did hear the second part, when they sing, they feel okay or they don't feel okay.
They don't feel okay.
Okay, so definitely then they require. Sometimes speaking is tiring, but singing is good. Again, it's to do with the way they probably think. That's all. So tiredness is an indication of a potential danger. So they need to see somebody to help them.
So there was a question, I think, discussion about AC and avoiding AC. So there's a question that today musicians have to perform in AC hall, and many halls are extremely cold. How do vocalists tackle this unavoidable scenario?
Pray.
Well, the stage is generally very, very well lighted. Lot of halogens and things like that, pretty warm. And once you start singing, I don't think the stage has much AC usually. Usually it's not. It's there in the hall. वहाँ का वहाँ है, हमको क्या है? So stage is pretty warm. There's a lot of lights. Once we warm up, we are fine. For a person who's very allergic to AC, I can say.
Yeah, that is predominantly the problems, the problematic issues regarding the sinus cavities. Probably when that is being properly dealt, and sometimes yoga is like, it would help. Proper breathing techniques, pranayama exercises, and some asanas would definitely be of some good help. And taking some other alternative medicines also should be helping.
So AC, two things. One is it is dry air, though it is you feel a little chill, but it's dry air, and because it's dry air, it induces a lot of dryness in your mouth. Also, it generally dries up your system.
Yes.
So to combat the AC issue is to keep sipping water. So if you keep hydrating yourself, many times AC issues are pretty okay. You will be able to do it. Second is the cleanliness of the air which comes from the AC duct. So if it is dusty and if it is a little uncomfortable, that's when. And as Kalpana pointed out, it could be a potential sinus issue also. And if you constantly keep on falling sick when you are exposed to an AC vent, divert the vent. Simple tips can help you out. Don't jump into AC and warm temperature often. Allow the body to acclimatize to room temperature and then move out. And so these are some of the simple things which can help and go a long way.
Thank you.
Funny,
So
I think
there is,
lots of Carnatic musicians always tell me they're like, could we not pick another month than Margary to sing? Because that is the month where there's like change in temperature, it's suddenly cold, and you're sitting in an AC when the weather is cold outside. And they're always, maybe Ram and Vaishnavi, you can say, they're like, that's the month you have cough and phlegm and everything, and that's the month you have 25 concerts. So it's like, it's funny that we've chosen the toughest month for everybody to perform.
there is a question specifically to Mr. Ram Prasad sir. He says, how long should one practice every day, and does the time of practice play a role?
The first question, probably the person who has asked, his or her guru should be the best guide, because he or she would have understood that person's voice more than any one of us here. So I think it's only prudent for that person to relegate the same question to the guru, who has been observing him or her for so long. In terms of times of practice, what I do is, since artists like us travel abroad and to different places in different time zones, I generally try to practice right through the day. It starts like around 5:30 in the morning. So at different points in time, I just get like about a 45-minute or a 50-minute practice session, then leave like a 1 or 1.5 hour break, then once again go for a 50-minute practice session, then once again a 1.5 hour break. But having said that, this is the way I operate. So this depends on the amount of practice that I have put in so far, and having observed in so many years what works the best for me. I don't know what your training is and how much you have practiced so far, and so it all depends on how much you have understood your voice and how much your guru has advised you. I know that I have not answered your question because there is no answer to it unless your guru says this. So I'm sorry I have not answered your question directly, but relegate it to your guru.
There's a question, it's open question, which is asking, will learning two different genres parallelly affect the voice?
No,
It's I feel it's like a
depends on what.
combination, the combination, because I also sing Carnatic music, I sing film music, as well as I try Western classical. But when I tried Gypsy, as I mentioned before, it didn't work out for me. So, and when I tried more duration of singing a rock style, it's not working out for me. So it depends on the combination, but it's more of a mental mindset. I believe it's more of a mindset. Nothing. What's wrong in being versatile if a person is really interested to become so?
If I would think there are several factors which may play in there. You know, it's the age at which you're learning. It's what else are you doing, and what is your health predisposition already? What other ailments do you already have, and what are you getting into? How much of practice to add to what Ram said? I would think he's right that somebody who has keen observation on a person knows exactly. But we've done in the lab certain experiments to understand how much of singing does load the vocal system. Loading the vocal system means you are able to see some structural change. You're able to see that the vocal cords are getting swollen because of lengthier practice at a particular way of singing. So we've seen that most often times up to 45 minutes to an hour of singing does no damage. No, there's no change at all. And he very nicely pointed that gaps in between the practices allows it to recover. So vocal naps after 1 hour of singing, giving a gap of say 15 minutes does a lot of help to the system. Drinking water at that time and not speaking. You've not sung, but you're not supposed to speak also. Many times what happens is you're not singing, but you're talking all the time. So that doesn't really work. So that 15 minutes of vocal nap in between allows you to recover and recoup. So that is to do with. So the two different styles at the same time completely is very individualistic, and you have to seek your coaches or your guru's advice, and you should keep the other person informed that you're learning this also at the same time. It's important when you're learning Carnatic and you're trying to learn Western. Keep both the teachers informed that you're learning these two at the same time, so that they really know what is the effect of it, and they see something, they will be able to tell you or guide you. That's important.
Can I just add on? Yeah, I feel that if your voice allows you to learn these two styles that you've chosen, and you're using the right techniques for both styles, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Basically, the Western and the Indian music is where the disparity of the head voice and the stomach voice comes in. So that is where you have to be careful and see if you have the capacity, or if over a period of say couple of months of trying Western as opposed to Indian, which you possibly have been doing, if there are some problems you're facing, then you have to rethink.
Yeah.
If you're adjusting, it's fine.
I
In my
just-
case, it was both Indian music, North and South, and since my speaking and my singing voice are very, very close to each other, I did not have any issues. It was more the other part, that is to be able to relate to the gamakas and the feel and the style of singing. Those are the things that people usually ask me. And in that way also, I'm very blessed that I could clearly demarcate both in my brain in terms of language, mainly gamakas, approach, more sedate, more meditative Hindustani music as opposed to Carnatic, more like a young girl running, So those are the things that, of course, come to you as you keep exposing yourself to that kind of music. And when you absorb the feel, then possibly you're ready for it. Otherwise, once you don't get the feel, we must not mutilate that music.
Yes. Similarly, there is another question saying that I'm learning Carnatic music for 12 years. When I used to sing in childhood, I used to sing from stomach. Later, I, without awareness, started practicing from throat. And then if I sing for long time, my throat aches. Could you please guide me what mistake I'm doing and how to practice singing from right place without changing the voice?
Can I say one answer? Possibly Kalpana can also help me out with that. Is my reading is when we all hear a film song by a female singer, sung generally in C sharp D, Every other normal person who is not a musician, who loves music, tends to mimic the same pitch unconsciously without knowing, sing the same pitch along with the song as many times because they like the song. In the process, they are actually singing in C sharp and D without even knowing. And the body adjusts, the vocal cord adjusts and starts singing in falsetto. But over a long period of time, it may not have the capacity. With age, maybe she was singing when she was 16, but at 35, she may not be able to do justice in that same pitch. And it may start giving problems. So most people, they learn a song, they learn it unconsciously in that pitch and they sing it in that pitch, which possibly they should not do. You can come down to A and sing that song.
Yes.
All we need is melody at that point of time, not exactly to sing in that pitch with Lataji or Ashaji or Ma'am Janaki ma'am has sung. It should be that you should be melodious and you sound nice so that the person hearing you likes it. But without realizing, out of ignorance, they think I will sound good only if I sing in that pitch. But I cannot reach that pitch myself. So I know my limitations. So also somebody should point out to them that you can learn the song, but you need not match that pitch. That is where all the problem starts.
Very true. I mean,
you all may not be blessed with that kind of capacity to go that high.
Exactly.
I think
Because
the person who
Yes,
asked the question has actually answered herself, because she said when she was singing with the abdominal technique, she didn't have a problem, but when she started singing from her throat, so she needs to go back to the technique that she was using, which did not hurt her throat. I think that's the best thing that she or he can do for us.
Till my late 20s, I could sing false, aram se. No, now I cannot for the life of me sing false.
Ram
That's fine.
maybe should be able to say from a Carnatic angle, especially the question was from a Carnatic singer.
No, the question is whether the analysis, whatever the person has observed, is something which he or she has observed by himself, or whether somebody else has told, or whether an expert has told. So it depends a lot.
Too many
on
things,
that.
yeah.
What if you self-analyze it wrongly? I mean, where is the surety that what you... Sorry?
Truth starts to hurt. I think that's
So generally, I would like to believe what the person actually says. So it's very important to honor the physical feelings, especially when it hurts, it hurts. So maybe it's the faulty technique, as Nisia said. Go back to your original thing and reflect on seeing whether it really helps you get the same aesthetics of what you're trying to sing now with the same sort of abdominal throat. Then that will probably help you, I think.
Yeah, the most important thing is, I mean, like, are you self-guided or do you have someone to guide you? I think that's the most important thing here. Now, you can, I mean, we can say all that we want, but the person who has observed the voice the most knows the best. So I think it's like looking at Google and saying that, you know what, I had a headache, probably I have like a brain cancer. Probably you have, probably you don't. So
Yeah, that's right.
So nicely. So there's another question. What is the proportion of nature and nurture for good singing? Nature versus nurture in good singing.
Initially nurture, later nature. Initially nurturing is very important.
Yeah.
And then when you age and you sing with feelings and emotion collected over the years through various experiences, self-experiences and things, it all comes into the music when you improvise, when you sing. And at that point of time, nature appeals a lot, not people.
the way
yeah,
I
this is
think
one.
the question was,
Yes, sir.
Joking. Just
how does
joking.
natural talent differ from grooming? I mean, that's the way I understood the question. Probably I'm wrong.
Yeah,
What is
natural
it, Ram?
talent versus grooming.
That's right.
Okay. So, I mean, like, you have examples, at least in Carnatic field, you have examples for everything. People who are naturally talented but did not develop because there was not enough nurturing. And you have other ways, like you have children from people, I mean, like, as Mrs. Kalpana said before, there have been people from non-musical background who have made it really big because of great nurturing. So it's all the question of how much time and effort that you are willing to put and how much your guru is investing on you and how much the environment in which you are is, fostering this kind of a nurturing. So natural talent does help, but it's not the only thing.
I just would like to add one point. I feel two approaches here. nature and nurture together, going as a parallel wheels. That is one approach. But one sure shot approach is that when you nurture it, you can ascertain whether the nature is present or not, because without the nature there is no point in nurturing. So at least when this is one side of approach where you nurture something, you will definitely the outcome, if it is naturally present, the seed has to sprout. Otherwise the nurturing becomes nullified. There is no point and no meaning in nurturing. I think that is also one sure way of
So it's very philosophical, and so I think it requires a full debate on its own.
Yeah. So I think I'll just take one last question for Dr. Prakash. And there are a lot of questions pouring in, but I think we'll have to put a stop somewhere. So will deviated nasal septum affect the singing voice?
If it is going to affect your breathing, it will definitely affect your singing voice also. So that's my yardstick. So when you have a DNS, when the doctor identifies a deviated, all of us have deviated nasal septums. And if we are able to breathe well and we don't have any other issues in breathing, most often times the singing is also pretty taken care of. But if you think your breathing is affected, you're not able to sleep well, you snore, you have some noise when comes when you are sleeping, definitely singing may also have its effect. The second point there would be natural compensations by the body.
Right.
So by nature, all of us seek solutions. When there is a problem, the body will seek solutions. It's only our mindfulness to allow the solution to settle in or interfere and collapse the solution. So if you are giving a wrong advice to your body, then it will start showing up as a symptom and which will warrant a medical intervention. But if you are able to absorb it correctly and see how it is actually allowing it to grow and develop into a nice thing, then probably. So my yardstick for nasal septum deviation is usually the breathing.
Right. So I'll just end this on this. I'll just read it. This is, I think, more of a comment. This panel has demonstrated that it is as good as speaking as it is at singing. I am trying to say the local language. Yandaro Mahanu
ఎందరో మహానుభావులు అందరికీ వందనములు.
because I was trying to read it. Yeah. So that's the message probably. Now, I think there are more questions, comments, and very nice appreciations. And we had more than 400 people with us on the YouTube also. And people are pouring in appreciation for this panel. And I would like to thank everyone, all the eminent panelists. Thank you so much for participating, guiding the new professionals. And thanks to Dr. Prakash for thinking about this concept and bringing a different thing. Usually, when us professionals, when we think about a session, we start thinking in a technical terms, how to present, how to make. No, we can't take out of the academician out of ourselves. So, but this was so practical. This was right from a person who is going through the different, all the aspects facing them, and then helping people to overcome the problems that they have. And thank you so much to everyone. Naika sir, over to you for concluding.
Can I just have one
yeah.
word?
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to say the stars, the real stars, the singers,
Stars as well.
Lalita, Kalpana, Ram, Nisya, Vaishnavi, and the anchor who put all these things together, Shreya.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would not have been possible at all without these people actually
Yes.
showing up the real stars value there. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. I really appreciate it.
And
It was. I also want to thank the Isha backend team who have helped us, right from the creatives to working with us to connect 2-3 times via the Zoom to understand each other. We're all meeting for the first time. I have met independently then, but together. So it has been amazing learning from each other. Thank you for this opportunity. And I really want to thank each one of you who joined this evening, both the attendees and the panelists, for making this really a useful thing.
And
yeah, an honor and
it
pleasure.
couldn't have been a better finale or we say conclusion. Today is our last session of our fortnight, and there couldn't have been it ended on a musical note, I would say. There couldn't have been better. Nothing better than a music to have something. Naika sir.
Yeah, thank you, Meenakshi.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, human voice is the magnificent instrument of all. It's a great blessing for the mankind too. However, vocal health also as important as other organs in our body, especially for the professional voice users like singers. We have a strong take-home message for singers from this session. Singers require vocal resiliency and a consistent, good quality sound with a wide pitch and dynamic range. Often, due to inappropriate voice use or other factors, they may suffer from vocal fatigue or voice changes, even with normal larynx. Such minute or subclinical problems initially can just affect singing or may later develop into vocal pathology. The speech language pathologists specialized in voice therapy work on vocal health and can also guide voice trainers, singers, professional voice users for voice conservation. I'm sure the knowledge shared in this session will help the entire professional voice users immensely. On behalf of Executive Committee of Indian Speech and Hearing Association, I thank the entire distinguished professional artists in the panel, Vidushi Lalita Sharma, Vidwan Palgat Ram Prasad, Ms. Kalpana Raghavendra, Ms. Nisha Bhajoli, and Ms. Vaishnavi Ramdas for your versatile voice, illuminating discussion, and valuable contribution. I also like to thank our fabulous curator of today's session, Dr. Prakash Guminathan, one of the authority in voice rehabilitation, for highlighting the required care, tips for maintaining the healthy voice, and Ms. Rhea Nagarajan for making the session even more compelling and exciting with her excellent moderating skills. I thank you all the participants once again. Good night.
Thank you. Good night to all.
Thank you so
And
much, sir.
before everyone leave, please join us again tomorrow for our valedictory function at 7 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Happy birthday, Dr. Prakash.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dr.
Once
Sam.
again, God bless you.
Many, many happy returns.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
See you all.
Thank
And
you.
namaste
Bye.
to Ram Prasad sir, Nisya ma'am, Lalita ma'am, Vaishnavi and Shreya and Meenakshi ma'am,
Thank you.
Dr. Prakash.
Good
Thank you
night,
so much.
everyone.
Thank
And
you
Mr.
very
Lalita.
much. Thank you all. Good
God.
night.
Thanks, someone. Good night.
Anil, you can close the session, please.